Hi and welcome back to Unsustainable. Sustainability is often talked about like a lifestyle choice. Reusable bags, solar panels, electric cars, recycling, eating less meat, buying less things, wasting less. But underneath the practical choices, there's a moral question. What do our actions cost? Who pays that cost? And who benefits? How long does the damage last? And how far away does someone have to be before we stop counting them? That to me is where sustainability becomes much more interesting, because sustainability is not only about the environment, it's also about consequences, the harm that we create and the harm that we prevent, the well-being that we make possible, which brings us to utilitarianism. And the basic idea is simple. Utilitarianism is a way of thinking about morality that focuses on consequences. It asks whether an action increases overall well-being, reduces suffering, or creates the greatest good for the greatest number. At least that's the classic version. Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill are the names usually attached to it. You can think of it as moral maths, sometimes useful, sometimes less so. Because once you start looking at sustainability through that lens, ordinary things start to look different. A cheap t-shirt is not just a cheap t-shirt. It might also be cotton fields, water use, pesticides, factory labor, shipping, waste, landfill. A plastic bottle is not just a plastic bottle. It might also be fossil fuel extraction, refining, manufacturing, transport, litter, microplastics, open burning, ocean pollution. A hamburger is not just a hamburger. It might also be land use, feed crops, methane, water, animal suffering, deforestation, and public health. The object we buy looks simple because most of the consequences are somewhere else. They're in a different country or a different community, or they're happening to a different species, or they happened in a different decade. Sustainability is what happens when we stop pretending those consequences disappear just because they happen somewhere else. That's the heart of it. Sustainability keeps asking us to add up consequences we would rather not count. Take climate change. Climate action is one of the clearest examples of this kind of moral thinking. Burning fossil fuels creates benefits, like electricity, transport, heat, industry, convenience, economic growth, modern life. That's why the world became so dependent on them. But fossil fuels also create costs. Heat waves, crop failures, sea level rise, disease risks, displacement, coral bleaching, ecosystem collapse, and those costs aren't evenly shared. The people who benefit most from fossil fuels are often not the same people who suffer first and worst from climate change. That's a moral problem. The question isn't just whether fossil fuels were useful. Of course they were useful. The harder question is whether the benefits justify the damage, especially when so much of the damage lands on people who had very little say in creating it. And that's where sustainability pushes us to widen the frame. Instead of thinking about my comfort, my country, my generation, those can't be the only things that count. We have to look at the consequences, or at least as many as we can honestly see. Future generations are one of the biggest challenges for any moral system. Most of our everyday ethics are built around people who are alive now, like our family, neighbours and friends, our customers, our voters, our citizens. Basically people we can see and people who can talk back. Future people can't do that, but our choices are already entering their world. The carbon dioxide we emit now can remain in the climate system for a very long time. The species we drive extinct will not be waiting politely for future generations to bring them back. The soil that we degrade, the groundwater that we drain, the forests that we clear, the nuclear waste we store, the plastics we scatter, all of that moves forward in time. So sustainability has this strange moral demand. It asks us to care about people who don't yet exist, people who will never thank us, people whose lives may be better or worse because of decisions made before they were born. Their well-being counts, as does their suffering, even if they're not here to insist on it. A society that takes sustainability seriously is doing moral accounting across time. It's saying we don't get to spend the future just because the future can't stop us. Sustainability also stretches moral concern across space. A product can be cheap in one country because the costs have been pushed into another. It might be a mine somewhere else, or a river, or a factory, or a forest. Supply chains create distance, and that distance is very convenient. It lets us enjoy the product without seeing the damage. But consequences don't become morally weightless just because they're far away. The atmosphere doesn't care which country the emissions came from. This is where sustainability challenges our moral instincts. We're very good at caring about what's close, and what's visible. But the modern economy is built on things that are distant, hidden, and delayed. So sustainability asks us to expand the circle. The person making the product counts, as does the community near the mine and the child breathing air pollution. From the farmer dealing with drought to the coastal family watching the sea come closer, it all counts, even when it's inconvenient. And then there are the animals. This is where utilitarianism becomes especially uncomfortable for some people. Because if morality is about suffering and well-being, then human suffering is not the only suffering in the world. Animals can suffer. They can feel pain, they can feel fear, as well as stress and hunger, and they can experience confinement, separation, injury. And modern sustainability problems often involve huge numbers of animals. Factory farming, habitat destruction, fishing, then there's climate change and pollution and the wildlife trade, and things like plastic ingestion and ocean noise. If moral calculation leaves animal suffering off the page, the maths is incomplete. A cheap meat product may look cheap at the supermarket, but the full cost might include animal suffering, land use, water pollution, feed crops, emissions, antibiotics, waste, and lost habitat. A fishing industry may produce food and jobs. It may also produce bycatch, seabed damage, ghost gear, and pressure on marine food webs. A forest cleared for agriculture may create economic value. It may also destroy the lives of countless animals whose homes are not counted on the invoice. If sustainability only counts human convenience, it is doing the maths with most of the planets left off the page. Utilitarianism can be useful here. It pushes us to ask, who is suffering? How much? For how long? And we're ignoring that suffering because the victim is distant, voiceless, or not human. They're uncomfortable questions, which is good. They should be. Utilitarian thinking can make sustainability more honest. It pushes past appearances. It asks us to look at consequences instead of branding. A product can be labeled natural and still be destructive. A technology can be labeled green and still have a damaging supply chain. A protected area can look like wasted land if the only thing we count is short-term profit. Many things are easy to defend when we look at the total harm they prevent. Cleaner air means fewer people get sick. Safer water means less disease, and so on. In that sense, sustainability and utilitarianism are natural allies. Both ask us to care about outcomes, to look beyond the immediate, and ask to take hidden harm seriously. But there's a problem. Moral maths can be brutal. Once you start adding up the benefits and the harms, you have to ask who is holding the calculator. Because utilitarian logic can be used badly. It can be used to say this community can be sacrificed for national growth. This forest can be destroyed for economic benefit. This river can be polluted because the project creates jobs. And that's where utilitarianism becomes dangerous. If all we care about is the total number at the end, the people and the places with less power can be treated as acceptable losses. Sustainability has seen this problem again and again. A dam might produce low-carbon electricity while flooding indigenous land. A mine might provide minerals for clean technology while damaging ecosystems and local communities. A biofuel crop might reduce fossil fuel use while driving deforestation or competing with food. Then there are carbon offset projects that protect trees while restricting the rights of people who live there. A pure utilitarian sustainability can start to sound like, trust us, the total benefit is worth your loss, which is just not good enough, because the people being asked to sacrifice are often not the people making the decision. So sustainability needs utilitarian thinking, but it can't stop there. It also needs justice, rights, consent, dignity, limits, precaution, and humility. It needs to ask, does this reduce total harm? Who is harmed? Who decides? Who profits? Who is protected? Who is ignored? What can't be replaced? What should never be treated as disposable? Some things aren't just numbers in a spreadsheet. A river isn't just a water resource, nor is a forest just carbon storage. The living world has value in ways that are difficult to measure. How do you measure beauty and wildness? They don't fit neatly inside a calculation, which makes the calculation incomplete. And I think that is where sustainability becomes wiser than simple moral arithmetic. It needs to count consequences, and it needs to respect limits. It needs numbers, and it needs restraint. It needs big picture thinking, but it also needs to protect the people, species, and places that big picture thinking can crush. So is sustainability just utilitarianism? No, but sustainability without utilitarianism becomes shallow. It becomes aesthetic environmentalism. Nice packaging, but incomplete. Utilitarianism reminds sustainability to ask what actually reduces harm, what actually improves lives, what actually protects the future, what actually changes the systems causing damage. But there also needs to be justice, or it can become a machine for justifying sacrifice. It can make destruction sound reasonable if the spreadsheet is large enough. So the best version of sustainability needs both. It needs the utilitarian instinct to reduce suffering and protect well-being across time and distance. It needs the justice instinct that says some people should not be sacrificed for other people's comfort. Some places shouldn't be destroyed just because the benefits can be counted elsewhere. That's the moral tension inside sustainability. It's practical and philosophical at the same time. It asks us to change light bulbs, redesign cities, protect forests, clean supply chains, cut emissions, reduce waste, and rethink what prosperity means. But under all that, it asks a simpler question. What are the consequences of the way we live? And who has been paying them? Because sustainability begins when we stop looking at the clean final product, the cheap price, the convenient service, the comfortable lifestyle, and start looking at the whole chain of effects, including the worker, the river, the animal, the atmosphere, the forest, and the person from the future. And that's moral accounting. It's messy and imperfect, but it's necessary. And maybe that's the most useful thing utilitarianism gives sustainability. The insistence that hidden suffering still counts. Future suffering still counts. Consequences don't vanish just because we would rather not see them. While we want to reduce harm and protect well-being and think beyond ourselves, we also need to grow into something wiser, because the living world isn't just a pile of benefits and costs. It's the only home any of us will ever get.